Mr. Schuler.
All right, so I bring to you today a consent agreement for the TDC grant agreement with Camp Gordon Johnson. It comes to you with a joint recommendation from both the TDC and Camp Gordon Johnson of the contract that I have approved. And if the board is so inclined, it is my recommendation that you approve the contract and authorize the chairman's signature thereon.
This is on
The
Camp Gordon Johnson.
$250,000.
Yeah.
This is
TDC fund.
This is $250,000 in TDC grant funding for the construction of the new museum on the Highway 98 location right next to, or just north of the Carabel Beach Park. The board has previously approved the funds, but you've never seen the contract before.
And your review is, you recommend approval?
Yes, sir. I do recommend approval. It's a very lengthy document. It's our first foray into this area of providing TDC funds for the construction of a capital expense. And so the contract itself and the attachments are probably close to 40 pages long. They're very detailed, limiting the size and scope of the project to about a 4,000 square foot building. And that the counties, and I think Commissioner Watson had asked this question, and I did put into the contract that our monies will not exceed the $250,000 unless all the parties come back to the table and agree, if that should come to it. We're not expecting that to happen, but our obligation is capped at the $250,000. Our monies will be limited just to bricks and mortar. We're not paying for surveys or professional services or anything of that nature. And the county will have a reversionary interest in the property in the event, for some reason, that Camp Gordon Johnson should no longer be functioning as a museum open to the public. The building would revert to the county, and then the museum exhibits would then be transferred over to some other organization. But everyone has reviewed the contract extensively, everyone consisting of the TDC board and also the Camp Gordon Johnson organization, and they are satisfied that the agreement comports with the board's intentions.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
And then the next item is another contract. This is for the Adams Consulting Group for the Phase 2 construction at Weems Hospital. This is a contract that is necessary to move forward with the board's approval towards construction of the new hospital. And we have two representatives here that can discuss the contract scope and terms to you in more detail than I can. It's Mr. Larry Throneberry and Mr. Nick Hill. However, I will represent to you that USDA and Mr. Cooper have looked at the contract and approved it and presented to you with a recommendation for approval. Nick, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schuler. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, my name is Nick Hill, and I would be the official project manager for Adams, and basically what we are doing is representing you, representing the hospital throughout the construction process going forward. We've been involved with the project, I think, since 2009, and been involved with USDA since we first started talking with them about receiving the bond from them, funds from them. So we're very familiar with that process. But the main thing is that we're there to represent you and represent the hospital in dealings with the contractor and dealings with the architects, the designers, the entire process, looking out for your interest. I'm not sure if you all have their contract in front of you, but it's some highlights of what what I will do is that I will basically document everything, conduct periodic meetings, weekly to bi-weekly meetings, to make sure the project stays on track, make sure everything is documented as decisions are made. Anytime throughout the design, make sure that the full approval and buy-in is there from the hospital, from the staff at the hospital, from the county as well, on the direction of the design, making sure that it stays in line with what is exactly needed. Now that we have the CM on board, managing the budget going forward, looking at it we do not have the CM on board, but when we do have them on board, managing the budget throughout the entire project, making sure that everything stays in line, checks and balances, as we go through the design process, and then also throughout construction, any type of change orders that were ever sent in, I'm there to review those, We have extensive knowledge in hospital construction. That's what we do, and so we understand the process, understand how to read change orders, how to, and understand what is fair, what's not fair, so that that can be brought to you guys, and you feel confident that that the project is you're being taken care of throughout the process. So that is up until now we had a program management contract, which was really just to main point of it was to determine exactly what what your needs were, what the hospital's needs were, and determine how to get the project actually started, and how the funding was going to come about, and what designer to use. And now going forward, this is our project management for the actual construction of the project. So, does anybody have any questions about what we do? Again, I don't know if you'll have the specifics in front of you as far as the cost or the contract itself or reimbursables or anything like that. But just to clarify that the entire our fee, along with the reimbursables that you will also see in there, are all a part of the overall contract budget that has gone to USDA. So the overall, it would be a part of that. It's not outside.
What does that mean exactly?
Okay. So there was $10 million, as Ms. Sanders referred to as the overall project budget. There is a line item in that overall budget for our services as a program manager, project manager, and then also a separate line item for our reimbursables. Again, there's multiple line items throughout that budget: the actual construction budget, the consulting services, design services, and so we are a part of that. And so USDA, the funding to pay for our services comes from out of the loan from USDA. Did I describe that as you were hoping? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, mainly, I mean, the bottom line is, I think what you're saying is, if the board approves the contract, you incur the cost up front, and then you get reimbursed on the back end of the USDA loan. You put the money back into your hospital fund. The other thing I would mention to you is one of the additions and corrections that I made to their contract was to, as far as their travel reimbursement, that they would be complying with the travel policy adopted by the county commission in 2012, and that Mr. Mike Cooper would be pre-approving any of the travel that they do need that's necessary to perform the contract, but they would be limited to the travel policy reimbursements and per diem as you adopted in 2012.
How long is it gonna take to build a house from when you get started, from day one?
The actual construction is 12 months, is what is the current plan. Once we get a CM on board and start getting more into design, then we will get that a more detailed schedule from them. But the overall program budget has a construction line item for 12 months once we start construction.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question too.
Sir.
Once the CM is chosen, how long do you think it'll be before we start turning dirt?
I'm sorry?
How long will it be before the construction starts? Once we get the CM, there's a process.
So the next steps, we're basically the schematic design is pretty much done. So the next steps would be we would like to verify that with the CM. Once we have them on board, make sure the design direction matches up with the budget, and making sure, and so they don't get down too far down the road, and we don't spend money designing and then have to start back again with the design. So the next step, once we feel like we're heading in the right direction, there would be a design development package, DD drawings, and then which is about, they are showing 60 days total for that to be done. A lot of it depends on, there's a little bit of a, I think the architect is being conservative, making sure thinking that there may be some adjustments that have to be done budget-wise. But right now we're showing that construction would start in September of this coming year if everything gets approved going forward. That's our goal right now.
Where you company out of? Where you from?
I am from Nashville.
That's where your company headed? That's where the office at?
Sir?
That's where your main office at?
Our main office is in Rome, Georgia. The way we're set up, we have people we kind of work all over the country. Right now, I have a project over in, I just finished up a project over in Tampa, and I have a project going on in Miami. So we are very involved in the state of Florida right now, even though I actually work out of my home, but I travel to my projects, my job sites, and keep up with the projects that I have. So, and again, we are very involved in the state of Florida right now. We have projects in Miami, Jacksonville, Tampa.
Mr. Watson, just if I can jump in, I'm Larry Throneberry. We do have an office in Orlando, actually, and we have an office in Dallas, Texas, in addition to our home office in Rome, Georgia. We do have all these projects that Nick is talking about in Florida right now, so we're very familiar with all the rules, regulations of the Florida state, which also looked at our agreement, by the way, and approved it also. So does that answer your question? Or I can
Y'all
go
gonna
for-
keep a person on site, or y'all just be in and out?
We'll be in and out.
Are we gonna have to pay for transportation from Nashville, Tennessee?
That is a part of the reimbursable part, and that is included as a part of, that is already in the budget as well.
Ooh. Y'all need to find a project, something
Well-
that's closer than Nashville, Tennessee to it.
Well,
That's
we've
a
got
lot of
some-
I have one question, Mr. Chairman, if you
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
mind. We're in phase one right now of the hospital renovation and stuff. Am I not right?
Phase one was basically to get us to this point of determining.
saying, but we're in phase
determining
one
what was
right
needed.
now,
Yes,
right?
that's correct, yes.
Okay, in phase one, how much money have y'all been compensated? Do you know, Mr. Larry?
$14,000.
Yes, ma'am. Let me go back to 2009. In 2009, when we started working with the USDA, we had a $50,000 fee in 2009, which we worked for about 2.5 or 3 years
Yeah.
on the USDA application. As you all know, we started all over on that about 2 or 3 years ago. And basically, there was another fee. The phase one that you're asking Nick about is $14,000.
$14,000?
That was our first phase, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to look at something. It says term of engagement. It says phase two consists of design and construction, and that's what you're asking for now. And it's based upon a 17-month duration, which begins upon the county's selection of the construction manager at risk. This provision takes precedence over all the other provisions that in
That's
here
something that
state.
I added in, Commissioner.
But, okay, so we're not paying y'all nothing until the construction manager gets hired.
That's
Right.
correct, that's correct.
I just wanna make
Because
that
that does, from that point, then the rest of the design can proceed.
Okay.
And then construction
I
starts.
just want to make sure that y'all are not getting no money. We're not paying for you to come from Tennessee or Nashville, wherever, until this phase two construction manager gets hired.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
Mr. Schuler, have you looked at this contract? You recommend approval of it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
contract form that I gave to you is in the original format, with the changes that I made. The underlined sentences are additions that I made to their contract, and that was one of the provisions that Commissioner Sanders was reading. And my concern was I did not want the 17-month clock to start ticking upon contract approval. Today, I wanted that clock to start ticking when the board selected the CM. You will also see in this document some strike-throughs where I have deleted language that was originally proposed. So yes, sir, I have read it, and I approve of the form of the contract. The content in terms of, the scope of the work, I've relied upon Mike, and of course, our consulting group to make sure that, and USDA, that the scope of the work necessary to complete the hospital is contained within the contract, because that knowledge is outside of my knowledge, experience, and training. But from a legal standpoint, I'm satisfied as the form of the contract, and I would recommend approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Have a motion second on the floor. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
I have nothing further for the board, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Is that all you got?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any
Somebody
commissioner?
got a hand up.
Yeah, I'm coming that way. Just hold on. Any commissioner comments? Any commissioner- Public comments? Tighten it up. We got a workshop.
It'd be brief.
It was really a question for the gentleman who was at the mic a moment ago. A couple of quick, I hope easy questions. One, has the scope of the work and the cost for the work been determined at this time? If so, that's fine. If not, when might that be, and who would actually determine the cost of the project?
You mean their consulting contract design?
No, the actual cost of the construction.
Oh, not that, I don't know. I mean, it's not going to exceed the USDA loan, which is, what, 10 million, 10.2, something like that.
Right, but my understanding was from talking to ACA that if they can't build what's required for the 10-point-something million, then we may have a decision point. And I'm still trying to find out if the project has been costed at this time.
That's the reason they get the construction manager on board, so to determine the scope.
Okay, and approximately when might that, you have a schedule for when you intend to hire the CM, so approximately when do you think we'll have these numbers?
I can't say approximately because a motion was made to do an interview process, and I don't know the time frame for that.
After the CM is brought aboard, approximately how long?
Normally it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get a budget together.
Thank you very much.
You know what?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'm Mike Whaley. I'm the pastor of First Baptist Church, St. George Island. As you heard from various speakers this morning, and first of all, I want to commend this board for your moral leadership. It was evident this morning that you concurred with various speakers in your outrage regarding the proposed event that's to take place during the chili cook-off upcoming. In addition to being a pastor, I'm also an attorney, and so this afternoon I appreciate your indulgence in letting me speak. All of us are certainly very much in agreement with the intent of the motion that was passed with regard to Ms. Sanders' motion.
It was his motion.
Whomever's motion it
Yeah,
was.
my
But
motion.
the original motion that was made, the intent was excellent, and we all want to do that. We want to stop this thing. But the wording of it needs to be tweaked a little bit, and so I implore you to tweak it a little bit, to amend it before you close the session today. Because as I understood it, and everybody that I've talked to this afternoon understood the original motion that was made, and correct me if I'm wrong, the original motion was shut it down, and no matter what, shut it down. And despite the information that was provided both by the sheriff and by counsel, Mr. Schuler indicated that there is no legal way to shut it down. And so I'm concerned that, first of all, Mike is a constitutional officer. And he is placed in a quandary if he shuts that down, to go out there and just shut it down. Now, we've agreed that he can monitor that, and if there's any violation of the law, that he can execute whatever's necessary to do. There's a violation of that law. But if the way that I understood it, and everybody else I've talked to understood the form of that motion, and perhaps somebody can read that form, and we're looking for clarification. That's what we're looking for. If anybody shuts that thing down for anything other than a clear violation of the law, we're subject to a lawsuit at taxpayer expense. He's in a quandary because he's a constitutional elected official of the state, and therefore he is violating his oath if he does that. He's subject to removal of office and other consequences. This board and the county is subject to lawsuits. So we need to make sure that that is amended to the effect that his actions will only be lawful in any action that he might take. Now, I understand there was also an appointment of several persons to seek to rectify a way by which we can stop it from going forward. And hopefully that will resolve this issue. But I'm concerned about the wording of the motion. And so I beseech you to look back at that wording, and let's make sure that that wording is such that it does not have any legal ramifications. I intend to write an editorial that will appear in the paper so that the good taxpayers who understand what the community standards of this county are understand that this man will do whatever it takes to make money, and so they need to know that, and they will decide whether or not they want to patronize his business. we, the pastors and others of this county, will be on site on Saturday to voice our opinion and freely speak under our constitutional rights what we think about it. So we'll be there and we'll make our views known as well. But I just don't want the board to be in a quandary. I don't want the board to be in a legal quagmire over the issue. So that's my comment. If you just look at that, the wording of that, and make sure that that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. You moved a little quick. I got a couple of comments, if you don't mind. On this, we also made a motion, as the good pastor will know, we made a motion to tighten up the ordinance on the ordinance that we were talking about this morning, and it passed. One thing that I would like to add to this, since it's such a problem,
She's talking to you, sir.
since it's such a problem, I think everybody.
No, he
since
was
it's-
talking. He was listening to her.
Oh, he was
Okay.
talking to her?
Uh-huh.
I don't pay no attention. I do my talking and go on. But anyway.
That's all right.
But one thing that I was looking at, Mr. Schuler, was let's include everything that we're concerned about. And some of the, I mean, we're concerned about the male reviews, the pole dancing, the strippers and all that. But we also need to be concerned about alcohol on the beaches. And we need to be concerned about the beer and the alcohol, the beer and the liquor on the beaches. So, I mean, if we're going to do something like this and try to keep the moral fiber of this county intact, we need to look at everything. And I mean, that's my position. I'm just looking and saying that. So I don't know how.
We're looking at the way in which you're going to rewrite the ordinance, but we also got to look at this motion too, because the motion, it put the sheriff in a position of saying, shut it down, and he said, well, if you tell me to, I will. That's what he said here in the open meeting, and that was the way it was left. And he can't do that. He just can't do that on the authority of this board, because you don't have that authority. And so that puts everybody in a box.
Yeah. And to continue to what I said, but I would like for you to look at the beer and the alcohol use too, and to address the pastor's concern with the motion that was made by Commissioner Lockley and seconded by myself and passed 3-2. The sheriff knows what his job is, and he's not going to do anything to jeopardize his job. But we, as a board, have to send out a message that we're not going to tolerate that kind of activity in our home. Now, I agree with the rights, the federal rights, the artistic rights, and everywhere else. But I also have the right, and everybody else has the right in this county, not to have to do that.
Yeah,
So,
and you can
anyway,
put that in your motion. You can do it any way you want to. Just don't order him to do it. That's what I'm concerned with.
The other subject is Commissioner Massey, and I'll move on. We were having a problem having our road paving company that was chosen to mobilize in the county. I don't know how the county commission feels about this, but I understand from the engineer that they maybe have mobilized to the Carabel area.
Started working.
But, Mr. Schuler, is there something that we can proceed on if need be, if this wasn't just something in here just to pacify a commissioner? You see what I'm saying? I want to do something that we can take an action on today, that if they do not proceed on with the paving project as intended, that you are given the permission to write a letter of intent of termination of the contract.
That is at the discretion of the board. You've got two options under your existing paving contract. One would be a notice of intent to terminate for cause. And then you also have a second provision which would allow you to terminate the contract for convenience. Under the termination for cause, you would then have to send them a letter giving them 10-day notice of your intent to cancel the contract, and also notify their bonding company of a default on their part. Under the termination for cause, exactly what it says, you terminate for your convenience, and then you would simply pay them for any satisfactory work that they have performed up until that date. At this point, I know the contract date or the notice of commencement under the contract is dated January the 19th. We're now sitting here today on March the 1st, and I think they've done a little bit of striping on the airport road, and then they disappeared for several weeks, and then now they showed up in Carabel yesterday with a sweeper, and I'm not sure what kind of equipment they have now. But if the board makes a finding that they have materially failed to perform the contract, then I can't write that letter, but the board has to make that finding. I can't do that on your behalf.
Well, I can tell you, they have not done any work in District 2. And I don't know, have they done any work in District 3, Mr. Noah?
No, I
Have they
haven't seen.
have they done more? Okay, with that, I'm gonna find cause, because the 19th of January, we signed the contract. And it's March 1st, like you said. I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion that we find cause and direct the county attorney to proceed ahead. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
That's be 40 days plus, man,
Right.
Yeah.
behind.
Mr. Chairman, back to the
The
point
point
that
of
the pastor
clarification.
made, can we have a response from our attorney about his opinion?
The board's action, and I did look at it very carefully, and it was an action to stop the male dance review or words to that effect. And I have given you the legal advice that the board does not have the authority to direct the sheriff in how he performs his constitutional duties. I never like telling a client they don't have the authority to do something, but in this case, the law and the Florida Constitution are crystal clear, and the board does not have that authority. So I think it would be appropriate to have a new motion that you would direct the sheriff to perform his duties, that you requested he enforce your ordinance as he deems appropriate and lawful, and leave it at that to his judgment, because it is the sheriff's judgment as to how he is going to interpret and enforce our ordinance or any other state law. I mean, we don't tell the sheriff how to make any other arrest. We don't tell him how to make DUI arrest or anything of that nature. That is at the discretion of the sheriff and his deputy. So I think a clarification on that point, that you're requesting that he enforce the ordinance vigorously according to the law, would be appropriate as a replacement or a substitute motion.
He said it was
That's at the discretion of the
unenforceable.
board.
He said it was unenforceable.
No, the
They didn't
statement.
apply.
As I recall, and of course, what the board recalls is more important, the anti-nudity provisions of the ordinance are clearly enforceable, and he intends on enforcing them. And so with that, and I think that is what Pastor Whaley was just referring to, is.
I'll make that motion for the purposes of discussion. If I get a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Discussion.
Discussion, go ahead. We're going to starting all over again.
I felt that way earlier today, and so I'm consistent in my position.
Discussion.
I don't really have any, I made my points and the commissioners made their points, and I didn't make the motion or the second, so I can't withdraw either of them. And, as I stated earlier real quickly, I was raised with different moral and characters than what's being exemplified over there on the island. There again, I have to look at the preservation of people's federal and state rights and everything else. So I do think that the sheriff can enforce the nudity part of that ordinance that we do have, and the ordinance does need tightening up. We've made moves here this morning to get that done. Of course, we got to advertise for a public hearing, and we've added some things that the attorney's going to look at as far as drinking on the beach and all, and there'll be a public hearing for that where everybody, again, can come in and have their input into the final draft of the ordinance that we're looking at. So and that's the reason I seconded the Commissioner Watson's motion to get out here for discussion, but I'm basically still at the same stance I was this morning.
Well, like this, you setting the preference. I mean, that's all I'm doing, setting the preference. Like, you want Panama City, you want it just like Panama was last year.
No, we didn't.
That's what's finna happen. If you don't stop it, you got to stop it in the beginning, or either have it where it'll be right. I mean, you tell them what they can do, you tell them what they can't do. They trying us, so I'm gonna try them, you know? Don't mean nothing to me. But I ain't in love with the script.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
call for a vote, let's move on.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Any more discussion?
Okay, Commissioner, we have, let's,
I
we
got
need
to
some time.
adjourn the meeting, then we'll start in the public.
Yeah, we need some time for us
Yeah, and we'll
to
give
switch
just a few
places. They
minutes.
gotta, they're gonna, Lisa's, area agency's gonna set up for a, PowerPoint. And we'll start all over.